All right, so good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the Region 2000 Service Authority. I guess just by way of introduction, since Greg is joining us for the first time, for anybody who is listening, I am Frank Rogers, Campbell County Rep, presently serving as chair of the authority. To my right is
Candy McGarry, representing Nelson County.
Susan Adams, representing Appomattox County.
Sandy Dobbins, I'm the CVPDC's financial services professional.
Clark Gibson, I'm the director of the Services Authority.
and behind you.
Alec Bradford, Executive Director of the Central Virginia Planning District Commission and the 2000 Services.
And driving the keyboard,
No, Kirsten Troutman, Executive Assistant.
that's the gang, and you are.
And I'm Greg Patrick. I'm the new Deputy City Manager for the City of Lynchburg, and just thrilled to be here.
Excellent. Welcome, welcome. Now, how long you been with the city so far, Greg?
3.5 months.
Okay, very good.
I didn't know it. Yeah.
Welcome to the region.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Good to see you. All right, so our next order of business is public comment. Have we had anybody communicate a desire to address the authority today?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll take a moment and open the opportunity. Anybody joining us? Is there anyone here who'd like to offer public comment? Kirsten, you seen anything? Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. We did have minutes in our packet from our October meeting. I do want to share that staff caught one error for correction. The minutes should be corrected to read that the FY 23 budget was approved through January 31, 2023, not January 6, 2022. So that's a correction offered up by staff. Did anybody else have anything on the minutes?
I had one thing under item 3, the second paragraph. It said Susan Adams spoke out saying she would, and it should be okay with approving the entire operating budget. I think you and I had that conversation. It's notated later through June. The entire operating budget year.
Staff got that? Any other corrections, edits? Okay, so hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the minute as amended?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All right. There's no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. All right, so now it's time to hear from our auditors. Our FY 22 financial statements have been prepared as were distributed in advance of the meeting. And Alec, am I correct that Mr. Packett will be presenting on this?
That's correct. He's on Zoom.
Hi, Mr. Packett, the floor is yours, sir.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank you for your time today. I want to start out discussing the audit work itself. Field work was performed in August of 2022. We had a team of 4 auditors, and we were on site for about 4 days of field work. The work that we did provide involved evaluating and testing internal controls, performing a detailed testing of records, and concluding on the financial statements. There are certain auditing standards that require that we communicate certain matters to those charged with governance. You can see this detailed in the separately attached letter titled Communication with Those Charged with Governance. This letter contains standard language with certain matters that we're required to communicate. I'm not going to go into detail for what's in this letter, but I do encourage you all to do so if you haven't already. Moving forward to the report itself, I'll start off with the most important part of the report, which can be found starting on page 1. And this is the independent auditor's report. The format for this actually changed this year. So if you're familiar with these reports from previous years, you might notice it looks a little bit different, but most of the information is the same. The main takeaway from this report is at the very top of page 1, which states our opinion. Our opinion is what's known as an unmodified opinion, which is an opinion without modification. In other words, this is a clean opinion. I want to briefly review the financial statements themselves. The main financial statements can be found on pages 9 to 12. And I just want to point out a couple numbers. I know we are a good ways away from June 30th, 2022, but according to the statement of net position, at the bottom of page 10, total net position for the year end was $7.98 million. And then looking at the next statement on page 11, the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Towards the bottom there, you can see that that 7.98 million represents an increase of 2.2 million over the prior year. The next portion of the report, it's mainly the notes, the verbiage and information in these notes for the most part are unchanged from prior years. There was a new GASB statement that was released this year, which is GASB 87, which is related to leases. But fortunately for the Services Authority, that didn't affect the Services Authority at all. So there's no extra additional notations or disclosures related to that statement. The very last thing I want to talk about is the compliance report. This can be found starting on page 57. As with all governmental type entities, this report contains an internal control report. Sometimes you might hear this referred to as the Yellow Book opinion. And what this is our opinion states that we've disclosed no material weaknesses or any significant deficiencies or any illegal acts that we became aware of during our audit processes. This is another clean opinion over the controls of the authority. So that's all I have for now. In conclusion, I'd like to say that the authority's financial records were intact and accurate, and overall the audit yielded a clean opinion with no findings. I'd like to thank you again for your time, and with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Peck? No, good. Okay, staff, do we need to take action to accept this, or is this just provided for information?
Take action to accept.
All right. So seeing there are no questions, can I get a motion to accept the audit as presented?
So moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
All right, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you all. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
All right, which brings us to the FY 23 budget consideration, if I'm right. We have been sort of putting that on sort of fixed timeline and hope that through mediation or some other discussion, we might kind of resolve some of our outstanding issues, but understand we're not there. So it looks like it may be appropriate, it's me talking, to go ahead and adopt the budget. I would recommend with the same provisos we've had on it, since it looks like we'll be in litigation around the excess revenue funds to carry us through the fiscal year, so we don't have to keep doing it every 30, 60, 90, whatever interval. And so if that is agreeable to the members of authority, I'd be happy to make a motion to that regard, but don't want to get ahead of anybody.
Well, I'd like to second your motion. I think if we could just have a little overview for the sake of Greg on what we're actually doing this fiscal year with the funds, operating funds.
Good point.
That'd be helpful. Thank you. So Greg, the board has been operating this year, updating the budget, adopting the budget every 3 months for a couple of times now. So we met in June and did that. Some actions took place in, so I think it was September that we had to re-up it again in October. So, and each time the proviso was that the way that the vote diverged from the recommended budget prepared by staff was to set aside all excess revenues, hold the reserve, and borrow against closure and post-closure to offset any operating deficiencies that resulted from that. So basically what that means is that there is a system by which Campbell County and Lynchburg are receiving revenue. That is revenue collected from private haulers, and that money is not being dispersed at this time. That is being held until the mediation that was addressed and is resolved.
So you were saying, and maybe this is a Bill question. the operations now are being borrowed from post-closure because we did not adopt FY 23 budget. This body did not. So we didn't appropriate funds.
So the authority would collect under the current system in this for current fiscal year, 25% of the so-called excess revenue, the money collected from private haulers. And so the guidance of the authority was to recoup any. So if that money is being held and not implemented into operating, then if there was any operating deficiency, we would borrow against closure, post-closure to offset for that loss.
And if everything gets resolved, then we'll pay back closure, post-closure.
So I assume those funds that we would have appropriated is now being held just in a general fund.
That's right.
Okay.
Which also explains why our net position is increased.
Okay. That was.
So just so I'm clear, and I've tried to get up to speed before I came here, so I wasn't completely clueless. My understanding is that we all pay a tipping fee that is $30 and some change.
30.
And the commercial haulers pay an additional $10 above and beyond the tipping fee that we all pay per ton. In the past, that excess revenue was distributed to Campbell County and Lynchburg as hosts at different percentages. At this point, the original plan for the 23 budget is that 75% of that excess revenue would go to Campbell County, 25% would go to the authority. So the reason that we need to borrow against post-closure to fund the operations is because since we're holding the excess revenue in escrow, that 25% is required to meet the operational expenses of the authority.
Yes.
Possibly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're not spending, as my understanding.
Yeah.
You're not spending the 25% that ought to be retained by the authority, nor are you paying the 75% ought to be paid to Campbell. So the 25% to keep the operating budget whole
Balanced.
is coming out of it. I think you've got a good handle on it, to your credit.
And then while we were in mediation, did the 23 budget set a tipping fee that was sufficient to cover the cost and the operations? So are we voting on a budget that is innately imbalanced?
I would defer some to staff, but not presuming the authority retains the 25%. So inclusive of those revenues coming into authority, the tipping fee was sufficient to cover the cost of service.
Yes,
Am I correct?
Yes.
And I think to add to that, that is, if you go back to the original member use agreement, I think it's what we're all kind of disagreeing on the language in that.
Okay.
That it said it could be, or maybe paid out to those localities, you know, and I won't go through the whole language, but you may want to go back and reference that. And that would be an annual vote of the authority. So it's not like you're required to pay this. If, you know, if deemed appropriate, then the authority would vote on it. And you probably have the same question that I had in the beginning. You know, if we owed that money, why is it an annual vote? Why not, and then an automatic payment? And that may have been how the agreement was structured, or, you know, I wasn't here then. I don't think Frank was here, or Candy may have been here. I'm not sure. And so that's why we have an indifference in thought on what that language says.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
just to add to that,
Yeah.
without going too far, because I
Yeah.
guess now it's a matter of litigation, that
Right.
member use and that language is one question that I guess now be before the courts. And then the second one is around an authority adopted policy, which is where you catch the 75-25 split, and the suggestion that that policy is not legal because it conflicts with the MOU. So you've kind of got a two-parter. You've got the historical argument over the excess revenue
Revenue,
payments under that construct. And then you've got the present and future payment of excess revenues and the argument around that. So again,
So it sounds like at some level, the points of disagreement will now be litigated in the court system, not amongst us. So as long as we are funding operations of the authority at a sufficient level, then the rest of it will sort itself out.
Right.
Yep, that's the hope, I think.
Yep.
That's actually something we agree on.
Yeah. Progress is made in 2030.
Okay, so good question, Greg. Welcome.
Thank you.
So if you don't have any other questions, I asked staff to prep motion language that tracked with what we've previously done. So I would make a motion to approve the FY 23 budget as presented by staff through June 30, 2023, except that the 75% shown to be paid to Campbell and the 25% shown to be paid to the authority from airspace reserve in fiscal years 2022 and 2023 will not be part of the budget, but will be held in a separate account. The portion of the 25% shown as revenue to the authority through June 30 will instead be funded by borrowing that amount from the closure post-closure fund. Member jurisdictions will use their best efforts to resolve all issues currently in litigation thereafter. So that would be my motion for the authority this afternoon. Is there a second? No second?
Can I ask for verification from Mr. Hefty? That's the same motion that was prepared by Mr. Hefty last year?
It's my understanding it is, but I did truncate it because the very last language was and agree to continue non-binding mediation. And I
Right.
think that ship has sailed, as I understand.
Okay, that's the only change in that motion?
Yes,
Okay, all right, well, I'll second.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Any further discussion? All right, so all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you all. So this brings us to our financial report. First couple quarters and initial conversation on FY 24. So here we go. An audit from 22, an approval of 23, a discussion of 24.
For December 31st, there's really nothing significant to report. Other than Schedule 7, we did actually purchase the 30-ton truck, which was $449,000. That's really the only significant thing that I wanted to point out to you for the reports that we have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any of them, but
I had a question on Schedule 4.
Okay.
There is an expense for professional consulting service, and I apologize, staff, I didn't get to reach out before I got here. Can you just remind me what that one was?
what line number is that?
It's 43141.
I don't see anything on that line item.
Page 14 of 30, Schedule 4.
It's 52,000,
Yes, ma'am.
52,770.
Everybody else seeing it?
Did we have to pay base for it?
I'm sure it's an actual charge. I just wanted to be reminded of what it was.
Is this accurate? These are
Oh,
actual.
here it is.
430. 22.
That's
52,770.
a different schedule than what I have. That's
Meeting the-
last year's. That's,
Yeah.
I think that's,
Oh, is that
The
what
other
we're looking at
budget, yeah.
last year's?
The FY 20.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that was the question related to last year.
oh, last year's FY 22.
Three.
No, this is
Yeah, we line from FY 23 budget proposal, which we produced now.
Page 14 of 30.
What's that? I'm sorry.
He's reading a line from the FY 23 budget proposal, which has been reproduced several times in a row. Or, several meetings, and so that was a reported expense as through April 2022.
Okay. And what page again? I'm sorry.
14
Page
of 30.
14.
It's very
Okay.
right hand.
So that was,
You don't have it? Page are specific.
so that was for our FY 22 budget.
Yes.
Okay. That I don't know what it is offhand. I would have to go back and take a look to see what the breakdown of that is.
okay. I'm sorry to put you on the spot like
No,
that.
that's okay.
Over those years, but I just had the question when I
Okay.
read the history and wanted to see if you could refresh what that was. So if staff can follow up with me at some point, I
Sure.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay.
Could you send that to all of us?
Oh, please.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's the consumption, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Answers to all whether you got it here. Okay,
All right.
thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I'll get back to you on that. Okay. That was really all I have for the current financial.
Any other questions for Sandy? All right, let's take us to 24.
You have the proposed FY 24 budget in your packet, and I also sent you a FY 24 proposed budget summary, which I'll review. We'll start with our tonnage projections. We have been increasing our tonnage over the last couple of years, especially our market rate tonnage. But that's starting to level off some. So this year I did not include a increase in our tonnage projection for FY 24. Our revenue is $7,982,907. That's 11.6% increase. This also includes the 25% authority share of the airspace reserve that we talked about earlier. Our operating expenses are $6,738,747. That's a 14% increase over 23. And our total expenses match our revenue, which includes the airspace reserve expenses we've already discussed. We are including a 7% merit-based salary increase for our employees. As we all know, and the inflation rate remains stubbornly high. We have not received our health insurance rates for FY 24, but we also expect an increase there too. We are proposing an increase in our member rate and our market rate tipping fee this year. The member rate is proposed to be $34.50 per ton. That's a 14% increase. And maintaining our $10 differential. Our market rate will be proposed to be $44.50 per ton. That's 10% over FY 23. Please note that we have not increased the member or market rate tipping fee for the previous six budget cycles. And we've had only one tipping fee increase in the last 10 budget years. This year's increase is mainly due to cover a overlapping debt service payment for our active phase 4 cell and our phase 5 cell that's nearing completion. It's also the increase will also be used to help continue to fund our closure and post-closure reserves. The debt service for phase 4 will be retired after FY 24, which will free up some funds. And these funds will be mainly be placed in the livestock road closure and post-closure reserve account. As you see from the attached pro forma budget, we use that as a guide for our budgeting purposes. We are tracking pretty close to where the pro forma is projected the tipping fees to be. As you also see, there's a steady increase in tipping fees up to about $40.50 a ton in FY 29. At which point the livestock road landfill will reach its expected capacity, permitted capacity. And those steady rise in the tipping fee is mainly due to increasing the contribution to fund the estimated livestock road closure and post-closure period. And as you can see from the pro forma, we do, based on all of our best estimates for closure costs at after FY 29 and our 30-year post-closure reserve period, we do expect to have that fund, those projects fully funded when we reach our final permitted capacity in FY 29.
So if I may, Clark, quick question for those of us building FY 24 budgets.
Hmm.
If I go to page 19 of 30, schedule 1. I think you presented the math for me, so I'll have to go back and do the dollar per tonnage, but I want to make sure I'm understanding the document correctly, right? So
Yeah.
I can see for Campbell County, it looks like I'm going up $86,751. Is that correct?
Yes. You can cross-check that by looking at your tonnage and
Right, I'll sort of back it up, but I just want to make sure that.
yeah,
Understand
that's what we're coming up
If
with.
he went through as proposed, this would be the increase we each need to build into our FY 24 budget.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Right. Other questions for Clark? I guess today you're just sort of introducing it to us so that we.
Correct.
All right, and then
No action today.
what's the schedule on it proposed to be from here?
After today's budget discussion, we'll take comments and staff will review and then bring back the proposed budget at our next board meeting for a potential for either more discussion or a vote.
So should we hold questions for a later time or?
No, we can go ahead and take questions so that we can make any revisions necessary so that we can bring back any changes at the next board meeting.
All right. I have a couple questions.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so when you say a 7% merit-based increase, so to me, that means it's based on performance and it's not just an across the board 7%. Is that
Yeah,
Correct.
that's correct.
and then I guess I'm wondering why, like on the pro forma in 2024, it looks like we should have a per tonnage tipping fee of 34.11. What made you go to 34.50?
Well, again,
That
the pro forma years moving forward is we use that as a guide. And as you'll notice, I have placed quite a bit more in our post-closure reserve fund contribution than is showing in the pro forma budget. I just felt it, staff just felt it was necessary that we begin increasing our contributions to that fund. That's where the big difference is.
How do we know how much we should be contributing to the post-closure fund? Is there a,
Yes, every year our engineers will review our closure estimate. We have a itemized sheet of different construction items that we check against certain indexes every year. The DEQ has indexes to be used for closure cost. And we take a look at that and project that out to, in this case, 2029 to begin closing the landfill. And we use that number for our closure estimate. And then post-closure period, once the landfill is closed, we have the DEQ requires us to have a 30-year post-closure monitoring period where we have to continue to monitor the groundwater, the gas systems, and we have to continue maintaining the closure cap and the grounds for a 30-year period. So again, our engineers will just estimate what those costs are going to be over that entire period. And our goal is to try to hit that number pretty close by the time we reach our closure in 2029, our permitted closure in 2029, so that we'll have funds in an account to cover those costs.
So the goal would be in 2029, when the landfill closes down, there is an annuity that exists, the proceeds from which will fund all post-closure requirements
For 30 years.
for 30 years to the end of the monitoring. Do the engineers or whomever calculates that, do we know right now, based on current assumptions, what we think that the balance would need to be in that account in order to, I mean, is there a number that we're shooting for?
Yes, and that's what our goal is you'll look at the pro forma. You'll see that our post-closure reserve fund is increasing.
Can you give me is there a page number?
It's the page 29 of 30. And if you look at line item number 19. And if you'll see, look under projected 2024, they have 100,000. I think we put in let's see.
600 and some.
Yeah, we put in quite a bit more of that this year. But as you can see, the remaining years of our permitted life, you can see the contributions dramatically increase over the next 6 years. And that's to make sure that when we hit year 29, that we have the funds, the cash in an account to not only cover the cost of putting the closure cap on the landfill, but also to fund that 30-year post-closure fund. And our member use agreement addresses that. If there's more, if 36 years from now, we have more than that, then the money that's left over will get redistributed. Or if we need more, then each locality is obligated to contribute more money for the post-closure period. But our goal is that we'll hit that number pretty close.
So I guess my concern would be if your FY 2024 budget assumes that combined members will contribute $100,000 towards the post-closure requirements.
Well, and this year we actually put in, what was it, 600? 655, yeah.
But the budget is for 100,000.
That's the pro forma.
No, that's the
Yeah, this is just,
suggested guide performance.
yeah, this is just the pro forma budget is something that we've used since
Okay, so what's the actual budget?
that's
What page would that be on?
starts on,
Alec, I don't know who gets the financial assurance report? Get that Clark or out?
I do.
Okay, he could give you that amount of what they're projecting as the post-closure cost.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because
you
I guess
have to go back 5 years, because you'll see like from last year to the most current, it jumped tremendously.
Mhm.
So that's really what we watch is when the engineers put out that annual report that's included with the audit.
and I guess the bigger question here is what we don't want is as we approach 2029, like as the event horizon shortens, the urgency to fully fund the post-closure requirements grows dramatically, right? And I don't want, and it looks as though if the total, and I'm doing some meatball math here, but if the total increase to the members is around 300 grand and Lynchburg's is 150, right? That means that any incremental change in the post-closure contributions, I could roughly assume that 50% of that increase annually would come from the city. I don't my fear with all of these is we're kicking the can. And at some point, there's gonna be a big old increase. And I don't want to have to go back and find $1 million.
Well,
It's been our fear all along is why we've been playing games with excess revenue, because if we're paying it all out now, what are we gonna have to fund that post closure?
So I think, I mean, I would want to know what we think the value of the annuity at 2029 would need to be.
Well, we have that, and again, the pro forma is just for you guys and staff to be able to take a look, what is the future gonna look like with our.
Well, I see an $800,000 increase if I look at.
Yeah,
the
but
pro
if you
forma
look
in
up under
2025, for us and 1.2 million over 24 in 26.
Yeah, if you look at line item number 3, these are the expected rates over the next 6 years, which includes the tremendous increases in the closure, post-closure fund.
But those increases don't drive enough revenue to cover the increment in the growth in the post-closure requirements, unless we are seeing some expense, large expense come off the books at some point.
As I said earlier, in FY 24, we'll retire our debt from the phase 4 cell construction. We've always tried to match our financing for our cell construction to follow the life of that particular cell. So at phase 4, which is our cell we're operating in right now, is almost
How much is the annual debt service savings when that retires?
well, let's see.
1.1 million.
Yeah, that's
So is that what's driving the increment
Yes.
in 20? Okay,
Yeah.
that makes.
Yeah.
See,
See, we're
forgive me,
retiring.
I'm new to this. I just.
it's all good questions,
Yeah,
and I guess
very
some of the heart of the disagreement, really. But it is, how do we mitigate future risk? But the debt rolling off and those dollars getting put toward post-closure, plus an annual increase.
An
in each
incremental
of us
increase.
Member rate, should fully fund closure, post-closure.
Yes.
But Clark, you do need to give Greg that financial assurance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That'd be very helpful to you. I think you're already pretty far down the road with your line of questions, but it might be some additional.
No, that'd be super helpful.
Yeah, and we send that every year. We send that to each locality for review and for your records. Because what the financial assurance is meant for is you are each member, each locality is still responsible for that amount of waste that goes into the landfill. They're financially responsible for it. So that one day, if that fund in FY 29 has a shortfall, then the financial assurance lets the state know that the members are committed to making sure that we will have the funds available to close the landfill.
And then
But we're hoping that's not the case.
are we making an assumption in the pro forma that all of the existing debt that the authority has will be paid off by
Yes.
2029?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Cool.
All good questions.
Yeah, very good questions.
Other questions? Thoughts on it for Clark?
I would just comment, he needs to look at it historically.
Sure.
So the pro forma, every time we're giving one, these numbers change. These member rates change, so you can kind of look at it historically from way back with the projected and now where we are.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's an evolving.
yeah, what we do is every year, once we have all of our expenses and debt service funded, we have been reconciling the pro forma budget, which goes all the way back to 2008.
Got it.
So every year we'll reconcile the pro forma budget so that the pro forma is matching everything that we've in the past. And then we use the pro forma for just a picture into the future.
Yeah, I think the fact that the pro forma changes validation It's a living document.
Right.
Our experience and anticipating our future costs. The takeaway from me is always, if we don't raise member rates, you could have some additional liability at the end of 2020. All right, what else, guys? I think the I'm sorry, Candy, I asked.
I think you were getting ready to talk about the 7%.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's what I was.
appreciate the 7% as an opening salvo there. I want to be candid that it's very early to try to guess at what that might be, right? And naturally, with all the questions we have outstanding around excess revenues, this is going to be another interesting budget to try to cobble together. But I appreciate staff putting it in front of us early on. Again, particularly for my own sake, so I can see that bump if indeed we pass a tipping fee increase that I need to bake into the Campbell County budget. Kenny, was there something else? I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, we all really appreciate employees, hard work with the authority and, but I have not heard 7% from other jurisdictions around me, Nelson. That seems a little higher than what I'm seeing. I don't know about anybody else. That was gonna be my question is what you all are seeing.
We're kind of seeing the 5%. That was
That's
basically
the
baked in
state's-
last year's state
Right,
budget. We
yeah.
kind of coattail that. But,
Yeah, that's what I'm, 5 and less is what I've seen up our way.
I haven't seen any less, so.
You guys done merit-based pay increases in the past?
Yeah, every year. Yeah, except we've had a few years back when we were in a I think it was 2009 or 10, we went a couple of years without any raises. So but
But I mean, you historically done a real merit system where your employees are all receiving different rates of pay increases based on their performance?
most will get the full increase. We typically we'll do a performance review every year, and
Is this someone who gets a 2 get less than someone who gets a 3?
that has happened before, but it's more the exception than not.
So this 7% is basically everyone who works there is going to get a 7%.
That's potentially what it could be, but if we do see some areas that need definite improvement, then we have the flexibility to, by calling it a merit increase, we do have the flexibility to make adjustments in that area.
Well, and conversely, someone could get more.
Typically,
It's
we
capped.
if we have it in the budget is 5 or 7%, that's the cap. An increase, individual increases sometimes can be considered outside of the merit increase budgeted amount. Sometimes that is necessary to do.
Honestly, Clark, you had tied this to the cost of inflation cost.
Mhm.
And everybody, regardless of what position they're in, they're all faced with the same increase.
Mhm.
So I think if we as a body, want to be fair to the employees, we really need to look at just doing something across the board. Because I know at times you've been back later for truck drivers or some discipline that you want to get an increase. Maybe that needs to be separate, not tied to the merit, because I think the cost of inflation impacts everybody the same.
That's correct.
Some floor.
And yes, we have had to come back to make mid-year adjustments in certain positions that would warrant a particular increase based on the current environment that we're faced, the current environment we're faced with as far as retaining and recruiting employees.
Yeah, it takes a lot of discipline to have a true merit
Yeah.
system.
Yes.
And I don't know many organizations that can actually pull that off. So I'm actually a proponent of across the board as a preference. I think from an administrative, budgetary, everybody's gas went up with our high performing low performers. So anyway, I appreciate staff's interest in investing in our staff and keeping them accountable, but I think there's other ways to get to both ends.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we have had certain, if an employee may be under a disciplinary action or a probationary period, we certainly would hold back any merit increase at that point, and then we would reevaluate that at the time, when that period is over. So we have done that before too, so.
I think when you lose the employee, we're almost having to bring them back at not an entry level, but at the rate that the person left, with the 5%.
Yeah, we got a tough reality, right? It's a competitive job market.
Pretty
Right.
much.
And we got an end date, that looms large over folks, so.
Yeah,
Sensitive or something on compensation, but.
Yeah, last year we were down 3 operators, and we were having a difficult time with recruiting, and employees, would sign up for interviews and they wouldn't show up. But we were real fortunate towards the end of the year that we were able to fill those positions. So at this point, we're only down one position. But we felt real fortunate to be able to fill those positions that were vacant.
Is most of your staff required to have commercial driver's licenses?
We don't require that. We do have a matrix that we use during evaluations. That if they do have a CDL, then they get some points for that. We also grade them. Our equipment operators, they're highly skilled equipment operators, and we grade them and rate them on 5 pieces of equipment, and that's thrown into the mix as well. But we do not require a CDL at this time.
What's starting pay for an operator?
Right now, it's around $19 an hour. That's where we've been. $19 and $20 an hour is where we've been starting operators. And when we hire an operator, we also will evaluate them based on that skills matrix and whether or not they have a CDL. We also give them a bump if they've gone through the process to get a state waste management license. That'll give them a bump. But we'll evaluate that operator, using that type of matrix, and then determine the starting pay for that operator based on skills and experience.
Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions for this afternoon?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. If you guys have questions, obviously just come over to staff. I guess we're reconvening, what you say, in March, and we'll pick it back up then.
April will be the next meeting.
I'm sorry.
April's next.
April. All right, anything else?
Tanya had the answer to your question regarding budget.
Oh, great. Okay. You guys mind if we flip back to that?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, Tanya.
Just wanted to make sure that you got your answer, Frank. If you remember back almost a year ago this time, we did the phase 5 bond.
Okay.
$6.7 million bond, if you recall that.
Yep.
And remember, we went back and forth. Are we doing a springtime closing, a fall closing? And at the time, of course, we didn't have any of that stuff in the budget. We were trying to just hit the interest rates where they were. Luckily, I think we made the right choice on that. But that $52,345 of that was the fee for Davenport alone.
Okay, thank you. That appreciate you dusting off the memory there. I just couldn't pull it back. Thank you, Tanya.
Yeah,
I
no
appreciate
problem.
that.
Thanks.
Cool to have her just roaming in the Zoom.
Yes.
What's Tanya's role?
Kind of was our CFO, but she is moving on, so. All right, Clark, anything else on that matter? Are we going on to director's report? All right, very good. Let's move. Bill.
Okay, I'll start off with our odor complaint report. Since our October 27th board meeting, we've had 16 odor complaints, 10 different days, from 5 different addresses, 7 from one address, 4 from one address, 2 from one address, 2 from another address, and 1 from another address. The previous 6 months, would like to point out that we averaged about 2 complaints a month from roughly three addresses. The winter weather patterns can contribute to the odors. We have it's been very wet. These low pressure systems, especially moving in and out, will impact odors for our neighbors. We've also been phase 5 cell construction has been underway this whole time. During that construction process, you have to peel back liners and so you can tie in the new liner. And when you do that, you expose some areas that might let some gases escape temporarily. And I also like to say that part of this phase 5 project was not only the cell construction that takes us through 2029, but also is an expansion of our landfill gas collection system into the currently active phase 4. That will begin soon. We will be installing 9 more vertical wells and 1 more horizontal well, which will certainly help capture more of the landfill gas that might otherwise be escaping into the atmosphere right now. I would like to say that that there's a company called Archaea Energy. They purchased Ingenco, which is the company that we have the energy project contract with. They have recently purchased Ingenco. Archaea is a very large, one of the largest renewable energy companies in the United States. And they've been reaching out to me, and they're very, very interested in continuing to talk to the authority in a renewable energy project. So at some point, they would like to just come to one of our meetings and introduce themselves and tell us what they're all about. So
I'm certainly open to that. I don't know how the other members feel, but can we go back to odor complaints very quickly?
Sure.
I'm always grateful to the authority for the investment in the gas extraction system. I think that's taken complaints way down, and I'm
Yes.
really appreciative of the expansion of that system
Mhm.
themselves. But it seems to me, I know, what do we say, 16, and then you rattled 7 from one address, 4 from another. Over the prior 6 months, we had about 2 per month from the same 3 ads. So are those
Yeah,
3 addresses included in the 7 and 4? Where I'm going here is there anything, I'll say more that can be done, and ask for the authorities' patience as I just vet this thought. These seem to be very specific locations, right? So is there something specific to the operation of the gas extraction system where it's simply not as effective in proximity to these locations? Is it simply topographical where things flow kind of down a creek bed? Is there anything else that can be done specific to these points of geography to help mitigate this? Because it just seems to me each time you report, there's 2, maybe 3 addresses that seem to be feeling the burden of the odor, and it seems so close to getting it eradicated. I wonder if there's not, is there just a vent at the gas pipe at the wrong place? Obviously I'm a novice at this, but just to have the same addresses sort of repeatedly afflicted, I just wonder, is there not something very specific to those sites that we could talk about, consider?
Yeah, we can certainly, continue to look at that. We have very good coverage over the closed phase 3 area. The phase 4, I think the complaints have been ticking up lately because of those issues that I explained earlier. But I believe that right now the active phase 4 doesn't have a fully developed gas collection system. And we're getting ready, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, the company will be mobilized and will be installing those wells. And I really believe that's going to make a huge difference.
And my understanding of that is it'll take that 16 number back down to closer to 2, right? But if the 2 are constantly the same 2 addresses over and over again, I just prompts the question in my mind: what is specific about those 2 pieces of property that they seem to constantly be adversely impacted by the odors?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the lay of the land.
Yeah, that's
And I can
probably,
accept that, but I just don't,
yeah, I mean, that probably has a lot to do with it. One of them is in a kind of a low-lying area and might, you know, that might have a lot to do with that. We do have, days where we get certain loads that come in that might release a slug of odors that just that particular day
travel.
might waffle over in that direction. But recently we've been getting more of a gassy type complaint, and I really believe that expanding into phase 4 with these 10 wells will really help that situation.
Okay, I appreciate it truly. I mean, it's such a vast improvement over where it was.
Yes.
It's tremendous. So, but okay, thank you for letting me walk that out a little bit.
All right.
You got tonnage?
I've included the updated tonnage graph. The last several years, as you can see, tonnage kind of moves up and down with the time of year. This time of year, we're kind of at a low point on tonnage, and then it picks back up. But as I stated earlier, that over the last couple of years, we have seen increases in our tonnage, and it seems to have started to level off. So at this point, I did not want to increase our tonnage projection for the year moving forward.
Yeah, the year to date certainly seems to validate that.
Yes. But we've seen some pretty large increases in tonnage over the last couple of years. And we did increase our tonnage projections for last year, but those percentages increases were really unsustainable. So we've kind of started to level off again.
All right, if there's no questions on tonnage, looks like you've got an update for us on phase 5. So
Yeah, phase 5 cell construction is nearing substantial completion. That project has gone well. We're putting together the QA/QC documents for the DEQ to review, and we hope we will get the certificate to operate into phase 5, hopefully late spring, early summer, which will work out really well with our timing and our need to use that space. That phase 5 does have a permitted capacity that'll take us through about this time in 2029. So that's about 6 years. And I do highly recommend that we begin serious discussions on the future of the authority and where we're headed as far as solid waste disposal in this region. So I would hope that we can start having discussions on our alternatives and options there.
I think that would be prudent. All right.
One last thing I would like to mention is the house on the Bennett property is getting to the point where we're going to need to spend some money on it. We've been maintaining it over the years. We've been with landscaping, we've kept that up. We just recently painted all the trim on the outside. But the 2 heat pumps have recently just gone out. They're about 25 years old. And we've been keeping the heat on very low temperature during the winters, and we have winterized the house. So there's no issues with water freezing or pipes freezing. But as you know, once you cut the heat off in a house in the wintertime over a period of time, it just starts to really deteriorate really fast. So we've made an effort to try to maintain that house over the years, but the heat pumps are gone. They're not working. And we have an estimate to replace those heat pumps. There's some electrical issues that need to be addressed with the wiring for the heat pumps. The ductwork needs to be redone, and the ductwork needs to be cleaned out. So we're looking at a probably close to $20,000 worth of maintenance cost to get the HVAC system back up and running. we won't be long before we'll need to replace the roof on that house too. So we're at a point where we're getting ready to need to spend some money on that house. So I just guess I need some guidance from the board, and this was not included in our budget this year because we just found out about this in the last week or two. So we could work it into our budget, but I do recommend that we do continue to keep the home maintained. I just wanted to bring that to your attention that we're probably going to be spending some money on that house.
Has there ever been any thought of renting it or so that someone is living in it to kind of?
We've kicked around a few ideas over the years, but we've never really made any decisions. There is we do have a farmer that keeps his cattle on it, which is a good thing because it has somebody's presence at least at the house on a regular basis. But as far as renting out the house, that could be up for discussion.
Just a thought. I don't know that
Why did
I'm a
the
proponent
authority
of that.
keep the house?
It's just part of the property that we purchased, part of the Bennett property that we purchased.
Yeah, but it's right there near the highway, isn't it? Couldn't we cut it off and sell it?
If that's what the board thinks is the best use for that property, we could certainly sell it. And we have had, offers for it over the years that we've talked about it, at these meetings, and it's never been any interest from the board to sell that house, but that changes.
So did you build anything in the FY 24 budget? Or are you thinking these expenses would be in FY 23 potentially?
Well, I would, if I move forward with this, it'll be FY 23. So yes.
If the expansion does ultimately go forward on the Bennett property, would the house still be viable?
Yeah, the Bennett property is kind of sort of bisected by a creek. And the house is on the other side of the creek. It's about 350 acres total. And the authority would probably not have any use or need for the property on the Route 24 side of the creek, just the side of the property that's adjacent to the current operating landfill.
That's how the creek's an asset to the authority. It's just impeded by whatever happens on the active side of the creek in terms of what market might be for it.
Yeah.
I think it's presently an asset and responsibility of the authority. So my thought is, you gotta do minimal maintenance on it, but I agree, there's some good conversation to be had about what the long-term disposition of that is. It's not ever really gonna be, I'll say, useful.
It's a very nice house. But we're starting to see some plaster falling off the ceilings and things like that from, a house that hasn't had anybody live in it for 10 years.
And we could have it be a short.
20 years.
I'm Campbell, especially use Brad.
Dang it.
Yeah, if we own it and aren't going to tear it down, then we should fix it.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you for that update. I do think some interesting points have been raised, and I would ask staff to give those a little more consideration to see if there's not at least a list of options. I won't even call them recommendations to bring back to us for some further consideration.
Okay.
I think that would be helpful.
And where might we find the funds to make these repairs?
Kind of move on.
All right, Frank.
Yeah. We'll find them. We'll find the funds in the existing budget somehow.
When will you get the insurance rates? Do you know?
Sandy, do you know when we'll see insurance rates? Usually it's in
Usually
late winter.
March, April, they'll send us the new rates.
I think it went up 10% last year, and
Yeah.
I would expect that we'll see an increase this year.
An increase, yes.
Okay, see, we've got a staffing update. Alec, that appears to be your item.
Yes, sir. So I wanted to, I'll let you know that we extended the offer here at CVPDC for the finance director position to Sandy Dobbins. She's agreed to accept. And so she'll be
Yay.
replacing Tanya and Gailey. Tanya is with us for 3 more months. And so there's a good overlap there for training and orientation. And it also allows us adequate time to backfill Sandy's position, which we'll be advertising here shortly. So Sandy's only been working with the authority since April, and I've only been here since June. So, but during that time, I think I've developed a lot of confidence in Sandy's ability to manage finances to operations. So I'm happy that she was interested in filling that position. Excited for it moving forward.
Great. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Right?
congratulations.
Yeah. Okay, anything else from staff? Looks like we've got a final item of a closed session. Did I miss anything, guys?
I did.
Okay, that being the case, we have a closed session, and so I would make a motion that the board go into closed session.
I didn't get that.
Put an
We
update.
didn't actually add it to the agenda.
We didn't amend the agenda.
We need to amend the agenda.
Okay,
Oh,
I'm sorry, thank you. We need to amend the agenda, please, to include a closed session.
do we know what it's about?
For land gas.
Yes.
It's about the land gas litigation.
Need a motion?
I've got one here on this, sorry.
Okay.
So I move that the board go into closed session for section 2.23711A8 of the Code of Virginia for consultation with legal counsel regarding the case of Virginia Land Gas LC First Region 2000 Service Authority. So motion, is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we're in closed session.
Move that we go back to open session.
Motion second, all in favor? Aye.
Uh,
Aye. Any opposed? Right,
Need a motion to certify?
please.
I move to certify that the authority, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and only such public business matters that were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the executive.
Motion,
Roll call.
I'll second it. Roll call, Adams.
Yes.
And Chairman, yes.
And just let the record show that Greg left before the end of the closed session.
Thank you. Good point. All right, I think that's everything that was on the agenda and everything that was on the amended agenda. Is there anything else to come before the authority this afternoon? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I moved that we adjourn.
Second.
I think we'll all vote yes on that. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you all. See you in the spring.
5-minute meeting, so now we'll do our.
I know.
Ask so many questions had I realized.
The questions are good. I mean, we got big gaps in the meeting.